They never told you this truth plainly. Not because it was hidden, but because it was too powerful to be spoken casually. Positive thinking is not wishful thinking. It is not optimism painted on weakness. It is not pretending the storm isn't there while the rain soaks your skin. Positive thinking is a force, a discipline, a quiet decision made in the private chambers of the mind that bends circumstance, reshapes destiny, and commands reality to respond. Every great achievement in human history began as a thought held with faith before it ever became a fact. Before Edison lit the world, he first refused to accept darkness as permanent. Before Carnegie built steel empires, he saw order where others saw chaos. Before Lincoln freed a nation, he imagined unity while the country was tearing itself apart. History is not written by chance. It is written by minds that learned how to think deliberately. The mind is not a passive container. It is a workshop. Every thought you allow to stay becomes a blueprint. Every repeated belief becomes an instruction. And life, without argument, follows instructions. This is the principle few understand. The mind does not distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically real. It responds to dominant thoughts as commands. Most people live by default thinking. They let the world decide what goes into their mind. News, fear, doubt, comparison, regret. They wonder why life feels heavy, why momentum never builds, why opportunity always seems to pass them by. They do not realize they are rehearsing failure daily, training their subconscious to expect limitation, conditioning themselves to recognize obstacles faster than possibilities. Positive thinking is not about denying reality. It is about selecting which reality you strengthen. When you consistently direct your thoughts toward growth, solutions, and purpose, you activate forces that were always dormant. You begin to notice doors where walls once stood. You begin to attract people, ideas, and circumstances that match the frequency of your dominant thinking. Napoleon Hill understood this deeply. He observed that the richest people were not merely those with resources, but those with controlled inner dialogue. They spoke to themselves with authority. They replaced fear with decision. They refused to allow temporary defeat to become permanent belief. They did not wait for confidence. They generated it through thought discipline. The world tests everyone. Pain is unavoidable. Loss visits every life. But here is the separation point. Some people let hardship define them, while others let it refine them. The difference is not luck. It is thinking. A negative mind searches for proof that life is unfair. A positive, disciplined mind searches for instruction hidden inside adversity. When Thomas Edison failed thousands of times, he did not say, "I am failing." He said, "I am discovering ways that do not work." That was not positive thinking as emotion, that was positive thinking as strategy. He trained his mind to interpret experience in a way that preserved momentum. And momentum, once established, is one of the most unstoppable forces on earth. Positive thinking is the foundation of belief. And belief is the fuel of action. You will never outperform the image you hold of yourself. If you see yourself as limited, your behavior will obey that image. If you see yourself as capable, growing, and purposeful, your actions will rise to meet that vision. The outer world cannot contradict the inner world for long. Most people wait for evidence before they believe. The few who create wonders believe first, and evidence follows. This is the unseen law operating quietly behind every success story. Faith is not religious abstraction. Faith is the decision to think in alignment with your desired future even while your present disagrees. The mind must be governed, or it will be ruled by circumstance. Every morning, before the world speaks to you, you must decide what you will think. Will you rehearse fear or will you rehearse strength? Will you dwell on what you lack or command focus toward what you are building? Thoughts repeated with emotion carve grooves in the subconscious, and the subconscious obeys without question. Positive thinking is the act of mental leadership. It is choosing mastery over reaction. It is understanding that while you may not control every event, You absolutely control the meaning you assign to it, and meaning determines destiny. When you change the meaning, you change the energy. When you change the energy, you change the outcome. This is where wonders begin. Not in miracles from the sky, but in quiet mental revolutions no one applauds. A decision to think higher, to expect more, to refuse mental poverty even when circumstances are lean. The moment you realize that your thoughts are not harmless passengers but powerful architects, everything changes. And once that realization takes root, the mind begins to awaken to its true function, not as a servant of fear, but as a creator of futures. That awakening is subtle at first. It does not arrive with noise or celebration. It arrives as a shift in posture within the mind. You stop collapsing inward when pressure appears. You stop surrendering your imagination to doubt. You begin to stand guard at the gates of thought, understanding that every idea you allow entry will demand expression through your actions. Positive thinking is not passive hope. It is active selection. It is choosing thoughts that strengthen resolve, sharpen vision, and expand perception. The disciplined mind does not ask, "What if I fail?" It asks, "What must I become to succeed?" That single shift separates those who drift through life from those who direct it. The mind operates on repetition. Whatever you think most often becomes most familiar, and whatever becomes familiar begins to feel true. This is why fear grows even without evidence, and why confidence can be built even before achievement. You do not wait for courage to appear, you rehearse it mentally until it becomes natural. You do not wait for certainty, you think with conviction until uncertainty loosens its grip. Andrew Carnegie understood this when he spoke of definiteness of purpose. A scattered mind produces scattered results. A focused mind, fueled by positive expectancy, becomes a magnet for alignment. When your thoughts are clear, your decisions sharpen. When your decisions sharpen, your actions gain force. When your actions gain force, the world responds. The majority live with divided thinking. They desire success but think failure. They want abundance but rehearse scarcity. They seek freedom but dwell on limitation. The mind cannot serve two masters. It obeys the dominant image, the one most emotionally charged and frequently repeated. This is why disciplined positive thinking is not optional, it is foundational. Positive thinking builds vision. And vision is not fantasy, it is direction. Walt Disney was once bankrupt, dismissed, and told he lacked imagination. Yet he held a mental picture so vivid that reality eventually conformed to it. He did not ask permission from circumstance. He commanded his future with thought, then paid the price through relentless action. Thought alone is not enough, but no action succeeds without it. Positive thinking provides the emotional fuel that sustains effort when results lag behind labor. It keeps the engine running when the road grows long. It reminds you why you started when progress feels invisible. Without it, discipline collapses under pressure. The disciplined thinker understands that mood follows meaning. You do not need perfect conditions to think powerfully. You need intention. Even in exhaustion, even in uncertainty, you can choose thoughts that reinforce purpose instead of panic. This choice, repeated daily, reshapes identity. And identity determines behavior. Your mind is constantly asking questions whether you realize it or not. If you ask, "Why is this happening to me?" your mind searches for blame and weakness. If you ask, "What is this teaching me?" your mind searches for growth and leverage. Questions are commands. Positive thinking begins with better questions. Every setback contains raw material for advancement, but only a trained mind knows how to extract it. Lincoln lost elections, faced ridicule, and carried the weight of national division. Yet he refused to internalize defeat as identity. He allowed hardship to refine clarity, not poison belief. His thinking elevated his endurance. Positive thinking strengthens emotional resilience. It does not eliminate pain, it prevents pain from becoming paralysis. It allows you to feel deeply without collapsing, to experience loss without surrendering direction, to acknowledge fear without obeying it. This is emotional intelligence at its highest level. Gratitude plays a silent but powerful role here. Gratitude is not politeness, it is alignment. When you train your mind to recognize value, even in small forms, you reinforce abundance thinking. You signal to the subconscious that life is supportive, not hostile. And the subconscious responds by seeking opportunity rather than threat. The mind that expects good begins to notice good. The mind that anticipates progress recognizes progress. This is not coincidence, it is perception. You cannot act on what you do not perceive. Positive thinking expands perception, and expanded perception multiplies possibility. Adaptability grows from this mindset. When you are not rigidly attached to fear-based outcomes, you can pivot intelligently. You can adjust strategy without abandoning vision. You can change methods without changing purpose. The positive thinker understands that flexibility is strength, not weakness. Learning accelerates when the mind is optimistic. A negative mind resists instruction because it fears inadequacy. A positive mind welcomes feedback because it sees improvement as identity. Growth requires humility, and humility thrives in a mind secure enough to believe in its own evolution. This is how positive thinking creates wonders, not suddenly, not magically, but systematically. It builds momentum in invisible ways until one day the results appear undeniable. And when they do, the world calls it luck. But you will know the truth. You trained your mind long before the world took notice. Momentum, once established, begins to carry you forward even on days when motivation is silent. This is the quiet reward of disciplined thinking. You are no longer dependent on emotion to move, you are anchored to conviction. Conviction does not shout, it stands. And when the mind stands firm, circumstances begin to rearrange. Positive thinking sharpens discipline because it gives discipline a reason to exist. Without belief in a meaningful outcome, effort feels like punishment. With belief, effort becomes investment. You stop asking how hard something is and start asking how important it is. Importance fuels endurance. Most people abandon their goals not because they are incapable, but because their thinking collapses under delay. They expect immediate confirmation. When it does not arrive, doubt fills the silence. The trained mind understands delay as part of the process. It interprets waiting not as rejection, but as preparation. Henry Ford faced ridicule for insisting on an affordable automobile. Experts told him it was impossible. But his thinking was not outsourced to opinion. He held a mental image of mass mobility so persistent that obstacles became engineering problems, not stopping points. His mind stayed loyal to the vision until the world adjusted. Positive thinking is loyalty to purpose. It is the refusal to betray your future for the comfort of negative certainty. Doubt often feels safer than belief because it protects the ego from disappointment. But safety never creates legacy. Progress demands faith, and faith is an act of mental courage. The mind must be trained to tolerate uncertainty without retreating into fear. This is where many break. They confuse uncertainty with danger. The positive thinker understands uncertainty as possibility not yet organized. When you can stay mentally composed in the unknown, you gain strategic advantage over those who panic. Self-talk becomes critical here. You are always speaking to yourself, shaping interpretation, framing experience. The question is whether your internal voice is building or sabotaging. Positive thinking is not lying to yourself, it is speaking to yourself with leadership. It is saying, I am learning, instead of, I am failing. This is temporary, instead of, this is who I am. The subconscious accepts instructions without argument. It does not analyze truth, it responds to repetition and emotion. When you repeatedly tell yourself you are capable, adaptable, and progressing, your behavior aligns. You take bolder actions. You recover faster. You remain engaged when others withdraw. Purpose becomes clearer as thinking improves. When the mind is not clouded by fear, it can listen. Purpose is not something you find outside. It emerges when inner noise quiets. Positive thinking reduces mental chaos, allowing direction to surface naturally. Action taken from this state is different. It is calm, precise, intentional. You are no longer chasing validation, you are executing vision. You stop comparing your pace to others because your path feels internally confirmed. Comparison fades when clarity strengthens. Resilience deepens as identity shifts. You no longer define yourself by results alone. You define yourself by effort, integrity, and growth. This identity cannot be shaken by temporary loss. It cannot be threatened by competition. It is internally sourced. This is why positive thinking is foundational to mastery. Skill can be learned. Resources can be acquired. But without a strong mental framework, everything collapses under pressure. The mind either becomes your strongest ally or your most persistent obstacle. The world will always offer reasons to think small. News feeds thrive on fear. Social noise rewards outrage. Distraction is constant. To think positively in such an environment is not naive, it is rebellious. It is a declaration of independence from mental conditioning. The disciplined thinker chooses inputs carefully. What you read, what you listen to, who you allow influence, all shape thought patterns. Positive thinking is supported by selective exposure. You do not starve your mind of reality, you feed it with perspective. As this practice deepens, confidence stabilizes. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that commands respect. You trust your ability to adapt. You trust your capacity to learn. You trust the process you are committed to. And slowly, unmistakably, wonders begin to form. Not as accidents, but as outcomes. People appear with timely ideas. Opportunities align with preparation. Solutions emerge where problems once dominated. From the outside, it looks like fortune. From the inside, it feels like inevitability. Because when the mind is aligned, effort is focused, and belief is steady, success stops being a question of if, and becomes a matter of when. When you reach this stage, patience takes on a new meaning. It is no longer passive waiting, it is active trust. You continue to work without visible applause. You refine without reassurance. You invest energy without immediate return. And because your thinking is anchored in purpose, you do not interpret silence as failure. Positive thinking matures into mental stability. You are not thrown off course by criticism nor inflated by praise. Both become information, not identity. This emotional neutrality is power. It allows you to respond rather than react, to choose strategy over impulse. The mind that has been trained to expect progress does not collapse under pressure. It concentrates. Pressure becomes a signal to sharpen focus, not abandon direction. This is where many of history's breakthroughs occurred, not in comfort, but in moments when retreat would have been easier. Look closely at those who endure. They are not the loudest or the most dramatic. They are the most consistent. Consistency is born from thinking that values long-term vision over short-term emotion. Positive thinking supports this by keeping the future vivid even when the present is demanding. Clarity deepens with repetition. The more you return your thoughts to your vision, the more detailed it becomes. You see not just the destination but the steps. You begin to sense timing. You recognize when to push and when to pause. This intuition is not mystical. It is the byproduct of focused attention. The disciplined mind does not fear effort. It respects effort as the price of transformation. You stop asking why success requires work and start asking how much growth you are willing to earn. This shift turns struggle into progress and sacrifice into strategy. Faith strengthens here, not blind faith, but informed confidence. You have evidence now, not always in results, but in resilience. You have watched yourself recover. You have seen your thinking improve under pressure. You have proven to yourself that you do not quit when challenged. That proof is unshakable. Positive thinking also refines ethics. When your mind is aligned with growth, shortcuts lose their appeal. You understand that lasting success must be built on integrity. You want progress that you can stand on, not gains that collapse under scrutiny. This mindset attracts collaboration. People trust those who think clearly, act steadily, and remain grounded under stress. Your presence becomes calming. Your words carry weight. Not because you demand attention, but because you radiate certainty. Learning becomes continuous. You stop seeing education as something that ends with age or credentials. Every experience becomes instruction. Every mistake becomes feedback. A positive thinker extracts value from all conditions, turning life itself into a classroom. This is where adaptability becomes instinctive. When plans change, you adjust without panic. When obstacles appear, you analyze rather than react. You remain loyal to purpose while flexible in method. This combination is rare and powerful. The mind, once disciplined, begins to generate ideas effortlessly. Creativity flows when fear recedes. Solutions arise when judgment quiets. Positive thinking clears the mental space necessary for insight. It does not force creativity, it invites it. Gratitude continues to anchor this state. You are no longer chasing happiness. You are grounded in appreciation. This stabilizes emotion, strengthens resolve, and reinforces abundance thinking. Gratitude is the emotional signature of someone who expects more because they recognize what already is. Resilience reaches its peak here. Setbacks no longer shake identity. They refine strategy. You remain emotionally invested but not emotionally dependent on outcomes. This balance allows sustained excellence. And as this state becomes your norm, life begins to mirror it. Challenges still arise, but they feel proportional, manageable, even purposeful. You recognize them as part of a larger design you are actively shaping. Positive thinking has now done its quiet work. It has transformed your perception, disciplined your focus, stabilized your emotions, and aligned your actions. What once felt like effort now feels like expression. You are no longer trying to become someone else. You are revealing who you have been training yourself to be all along. And in that revelation, a deeper understanding settles in. You realize that success was never something to chase, it was something to allow. Allow through alignment. Allow through disciplined thought. Allow through becoming the kind of person whose inner world is strong enough to support an expanded outer one. Positive thinking has now moved beyond technique. It has become character. It shows in how you listen, how you decide, how you wait. You are no longer rushed by fear of missing out nor frozen by fear of failure. Time feels different when the mind is ordered. You move with intention instead of urgency. The storms still come. They always will. But now they test structure, not spirit. You bend where necessary and hold firm where it matters. You understand that resistance is not opposition, it is feedback. And feedback, when interpreted correctly, accelerates mastery. You stop asking life to be easy. You ask yourself to be ready. Ready in thought. Ready in belief. Ready in discipline. This readiness creates a quiet authority within you. You do not need external validation because your inner standards are clear. The past loosens its grip. Regret fades because it no longer defines you. You extract wisdom without carrying weight. The future no longer intimidates because you trust your ability to meet it intelligently. This is freedom, the freedom that comes from self-mastery. Positive thinking has trained you to see beyond appearances. When others see endings, you see transitions. When others see limits, you see leverage. When others complain, you calculate. This does not make you cold, it makes you effective. You recognize that thoughts shape habits, habits shape character, and character shapes destiny. Nothing about this process is accidental. Every day you choose what to think and every choice compounds. This is the quiet mathematics of greatness. There is humility here, but not smallness. You respect the process too much to rush it. You respect yourself too much to sabotage it. You understand that becoming takes time, and time favors the consistent. At this level, inspiration is steady, not explosive. You no longer wait for motivation to strike. You move because movement is who you are now. Action feels natural when belief is settled. And then, almost without announcement, you realize something profound. You are no longer hoping for a breakthrough. You are living inside one. The way you think, the way you respond, the way you persist, these are the wonders in motion. The world may never see the hours you spent correcting your thoughts. It may never applaud the moments you chose faith over fear, discipline over distraction, purpose over comfort. But the results will speak with undeniable clarity. Because positive thinking, practiced deliberately and lived consistently, does what few expect. It does not just change outcomes, it changes identity. And when identity evolves, destiny follows. This is the secret few know and even fewer apply. That the greatest power you will ever wield is not circumstance, not opportunity, not even talent, but the ability to think with intention, believe with conviction, and act in alignment with a vision that refuses to shrink. When you master that, you do not wait for wonders. You become the cause of them. And when you become the cause, responsibility replaces wishing. You no longer ask the world to change, you ask yourself to rise. This is where true empowerment lives. Not in controlling events, but in governing response. Not in predicting outcomes, but in preparing character. The disciplined mind understands something the restless never grasp. Life does not reward intensity once. It rewards alignment over time. Short bursts of enthusiasm fade. Deep-rooted belief endures. Positive thinking, sustained and refined, becomes the quiet engine that never shuts down. You begin to sense an inner order. Decisions simplify. Noise loses its pull. You are no longer distracted by every opportunity because your purpose acts as a filter. You say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. Clarity has replaced confusion. There is a calm confidence now, not because you expect perfection, but because you trust recovery. You know that if something breaks, you can rebuild. If something fails, you can refine. This trust in your own adaptability is one of the highest forms of security. Positive thinking has taught you to respect the unseen. You understand that effort compounds even when results are invisible. That seeds grow in darkness before they break soil. That progress often whispers before it roars. You stay committed because you know how growth works. You stop needing constant proof. Faith has matured into knowing. Not arrogance, not blind optimism, but grounded certainty built from repeated self-mastery. You have watched yourself show up too many times to doubt your capacity now. The mind that once reacted now leads. The emotions that once overwhelmed now inform. The thoughts that once wandered now serve. This is integration, the moment when inner chaos becomes inner order. You no longer envy success. You understand it. You see the thinking behind it, the discipline beneath it, the patience that shaped it. And because you understand it, you respect the process enough to walk it fully. Positive thinking has sharpened your sense of meaning. You are no longer driven only by reward, but by contribution. You want your work, your presence, your effort to matter beyond yourself. This gives energy a higher purpose, and higher purpose multiplies strength. When obstacles appear now, they feel almost familiar. Not threatening, familiar. You recognize them as signals that growth is near. Resistance no longer surprises you. It confirms that you are moving forward. And so you continue. Not because it is easy. Not because it is guaranteed. But because your thinking is aligned with who you have decided to become. That decision, once made and honored daily, becomes unbreakable. This is the true wonder of positive thinking. It does not create fantasy, it creates foundation. A foundation strong enough to support vision, pressure, responsibility, and success without collapse. In the end, the world does not change because you asked it to. It changes because you did. Because you chose to think deliberately. Because you chose belief over fear. Because you chose growth over comfort. Because you chose mastery over excuse. And that choice, repeated quietly, faithfully, relentlessly, is how positive thinking creates wonders. And even now, the process does not end, it deepens. Mastery is not a destination, it is a way of standing in the world. Positive thinking has reshaped how you meet each moment. You no longer rush past the present chasing the future, nor cling to the past for safety. You stand centered, alert, intentional. You begin to notice how few people truly govern their inner world. Most are governed by moods, by trends, by the opinions of others. You feel compassion, not superiority. You understand how easy it is to drift when thinking is left unattended. And this understanding strengthens your commitment to remain awake. Awake to your thoughts. Awake to your standards. Awake to your responsibility. Because now you know that every thought is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every mental rehearsal is preparation. Every internal conversation is either constructing strength or quietly eroding it. There is no neutral thinking, only intentional or unconscious. Positive thinking has taught you to slow down internally even when life accelerates externally. In chaos, you find stillness. In urgency, you find precision. This inner calm becomes your competitive edge, your stabilizer, your anchor. You no longer fear solitude. Silence has become a place of clarity rather than discomfort. In quiet moments, you refine vision. You revisit purpose. You realign. The mind, once crowded, now feels spacious, capable of holding big ideas without strain. And when challenges rise that would have once broken you, you recognize the difference immediately. The same event meets a different mind and produces a different outcome. This is the proof. Not theoretical, not philosophical. You understand now why few know this truth. Because it requires responsibility. It demands consistency. It asks you to look inward rather than blame outward. And most people would rather be comforted than empowered. But you chose empowerment. You chose to think when it was easier to complain. You chose to believe when it was safer to doubt. You chose to persist when quitting would have been applauded. And because of that choice, life responds differently to you now. Not perfectly, but honestly. It meets you at the level of your thinking. This is the quiet agreement between the mind and reality. Think clearly, act faithfully, and remain patient, and the world will eventually reflect your inner order. Positive thinking did not remove obstacles. It taught you how to move through them. It did not promise ease. It built endurance. It did not give you certainty. It gave you command. And that command, over thought, over emotion, over direction, is the greatest form of wealth any person can possess. So you continue forward, not seeking permission, not waiting for conditions, not asking if you are ready. Because you understand now. Readiness is created. Wonders are built. And the mind, when mastered, becomes the most powerful force you will ever wield. From this understanding, a quiet strength settles into your presence. You no longer announce your intentions to the world. You execute them. You understand that energy wasted on explanation is energy stolen from creation. Silence becomes strategic. Focus becomes sacred. You stop measuring your life by speed and start measuring it by direction. Fast progress in the wrong direction is still failure. Slow progress in alignment is unstoppable. Positive thinking has taught you patience without passivity, movement without panic. You now recognize temptation for what it is, distraction dressed as relief. Short-term comfort no longer negotiates with long-term vision. You have seen too clearly what disciplined thinking can build to betray it for momentary ease. This loyalty to your future is one of the highest forms of self-respect. The mind continues to refine itself. Old fears surface occasionally, but they no longer control the narrative. You acknowledge them, extract the message, and move forward. Fear has become information, not authority. Doubt has become a signal to strengthen belief, not surrender to it. Positive thinking has sharpened your sense of timing. You act when action is required. You wait when waiting is wise. You no longer confuse motion with progress. Stillness, when intentional, becomes preparation. Your standards rise naturally. Not from arrogance, but from awareness. You know what you are capable of now. You know what disciplined thought produces. You refuse environments, conversations, and habits that weaken the mind you worked so hard to build. This is where leadership begins, not over others, but over self. And self-leadership radiates. People may not understand your discipline, but they feel its effects. They notice consistency. They notice calm under pressure. They notice results. Positive thinking has aligned you with responsibility. You no longer expect the world to carry you, you carry your part. This creates dignity. And dignity fuels confidence that does not need applause. You also understand now that growth is cyclical. There will be new levels, new challenges, new stretches of uncertainty. But the fear of starting again is gone. You trust the process because you trust yourself within it. And so the work continues, quietly, steadily, deliberately. Each thought chosen with care. Each action taken with intention. Each setback met with intelligence instead of emotion. This is not motivation anymore. This is identity. You think with purpose. You believe with discipline. You act with alignment. And when you live this way long enough, life cannot help but respond. Not because it is generous, but because it is lawful. It reflects the order of the mind that engages it. This is why positive thinking creates wonders. Not because it ignores reality, but because it trains you to shape it. And once that truth is understood, once it is lived, once it is embodied, there is no going back. Only forward, only upward, only deeper into the mastery of the mind that now works for you, and never against you. And forward you move, not driven by noise, not pulled by urgency, but guided by an inner compass that no longer wavers. You understand now that direction is more powerful than speed, and certainty more valuable than applause. The world may rush, panic, and react, but you remain anchored. Positive thinking has rewired how you experience effort. Work no longer feels like resistance. It feels like expression. You are not forcing yourself to act. You are allowing what you believe to flow outward. Action becomes a natural extension of identity. You stop asking, "Will this work?" and start asking, "Is this aligned?" Because alignment outlasts outcomes. Even when results fluctuate, alignment sustains momentum. This is why you no longer fear recalibration. Adjusting course does not threaten you. It proves awareness. The mind has become a place of order, not conflict. Decisions no longer fight each other. Values no longer compete. You know what matters, and that knowledge simplifies everything. When clarity is present, complexity dissolves. You see now that most exhaustion is mental, not physical. It comes from contradiction, wanting success while thinking in limitation, seeking peace while feeding chaos. Positive thinking resolved that contradiction. Energy returned the moment alignment was restored. You no longer argue with reality. You study it. You no longer resist discomfort. You use it. Pressure has become refinement. Delay has become strategy. Difficulty has become invitation. This is where confidence becomes unshakable. Not because nothing can go wrong, but because nothing can take away what you have built internally. Circumstances can shift, but your thinking remains disciplined. And disciplined thinking is renewable power. You begin to sense a deeper rhythm to life. Effort, rest. Focus, release. Intensity, patience. You move with that rhythm instead of fighting it. This harmony multiplies effectiveness. You accomplish more by forcing less, because force has been replaced by alignment. Positive thinking has also taught you reverence. For time, for energy, for intention. You no longer spend yourself cheaply. You invest deliberately. Every commitment passes through the filter of purpose. Every action reflects respect for your future. And when moments of doubt arise, as they sometimes will, you recognize them instantly. Not as enemies, but as reminders to return to discipline. You do not panic. You recalibrate. The mind has learned the way home. This is the highest form of self-trust, knowing that even when you drift, you will correct. Even when you fall, you will rise intelligently. Even when clarity fades, you will restore it through thought. Positive thinking has done what nothing else could. It has given you continuity. You are no longer a different person in different moments. You are consistent, grounded, integrated. This wholeness is rare and powerful. And from this place, impact becomes inevitable. Whether seen or unseen, praised or ignored, the work carries weight. The results carry truth. You move knowing that you are aligned with something deeper than circumstance, something rooted in principle. This is not hope anymore. This is command. Command of attention. Command of emotion. Command of direction. You did not inherit this power. You did not borrow it. You built it, thought by thought, decision by decision, day by day. And now you stand as living proof of what few ever discover, that the mind, when trained, becomes destiny's architect. Positive thinking did not give you illusions. It gave you authority. It did not promise ease. It delivered mastery. And mastery, once earned, never leaves. Because the moment you learned to think deliberately, you stopped waiting for wonders and started creating them. And creating them becomes less dramatic than most imagine. Wonders do not arrive with thunder. They arrive with quiet certainty, with days that stack cleanly on top of one another, with decisions made correctly when no one is watching, with the steady accumulation of integrity between thought and action. You no longer crave intensity for its own sake. You understand that sustained power is calm. Fire that burns too brightly consumes itself. The mind you have built burns steadily, efficiently, without waste. This is why you endure where others fade. Positive thinking has reshaped your relationship with effort. You no longer romanticize struggle, nor do you avoid it. You meet it honestly. You work because work is the language through which vision becomes real. And because your thinking is aligned, work feels meaningful rather than draining. You have learned to respect small wins, not as final victories, but as confirmations of direction. Each one reinforces belief. Each one strengthens identity. Momentum grows not from giant leaps, but from uninterrupted movement. There is a maturity now in how you hold ambition. It is no longer desperate. It is no longer noisy. It is grounded. You want more, not from insecurity, but from capacity. You know you can carry more responsibility, more influence, more impact. And so you prepare yourself accordingly. Positive thinking has also softened your relationship with others. You no longer compete unnecessarily. You collaborate without losing self. You admire without diminishing yourself. You understand that abundance multiplies when it is not feared. You are no longer easily provoked. Insults bounce where insecurity once absorbed them. Opinions pass without lodging. You know who you are becoming, and that knowing creates emotional armor that does not harden the heart. It steadies it. The mind now moves ahead of circumstance. You anticipate challenges before they arrive. You prepare mentally before pressure tests you. This foresight is not anxiety. It is strategic awareness born from clarity. You begin to see life as a long arc rather than a series of emergencies. Short-term fluctuations lose their power over you. You remain committed through seasons. You understand cycles. You trust timing. Positive thinking has given you something rare: internal continuity. You are the same person in victory and defeat, in praise and silence, in ease and adversity. This consistency makes you formidable. You also understand now why most people never reach this place. Not because it is reserved for a few, but because it requires daily discipline. It asks you to correct thoughts when it would be easier to indulge them, to choose patience when impulse tempts, to stay aligned when distraction invites. But you no longer see this as sacrifice. You see it as stewardship of your mind, your time, your potential. You protect what you have built because you know its value. And when you look back, you do not see a single moment where everything changed. You see 1,000 moments where you chose better thinking, better interpretation, better response. That is how transformation actually happens. Positive thinking did not save you from effort. It made effort effective. It did not remove uncertainty. It taught you how to move within it. It did not make you special. It made you intentional. And intention, when sustained, becomes destiny in motion. So you continue, calm, focused, grounded. Not because you are finished, but because you are committed. The work remains. The growth continues. The vision expands. And now, whatever comes, you are ready. Because the greatest work has already been done. Not outside you, but within the mind that learned how to think, and never surrendered that power again. And with that readiness, you step fully into ownership of your life. Not ownership as control, but ownership as authorship. You are no longer living in reaction to chapters written by fear, chance, or circumstance. You are writing deliberately, sentence by sentence, through thought, choice, and action. Positive thinking has taught you reverence for beginnings. Every day is a reset of authority. No matter what happened yesterday, the mind can be realigned today. This knowledge frees you from the tyranny of past mistakes. You are not trapped by what was, you are directed by what you decide now. You understand now that greatness is quiet before it is visible, that the strongest roots grow underground. That preparation often looks like obscurity. And because your thinking is mature, you do not rush the reveal. You let substance build. You have learned to sit with unanswered questions without anxiety. Some answers require time, not force. Some doors open only after patience proves sincerity. Positive thinking gave you the strength to wait without weakening. Your relationship with failure has transformed completely. It no longer defines you, frightens you, or delays you. Failure has become feedback, and feedback is progress in disguise. You move forward informed, not injured. There is dignity in how you carry yourself now. You do not oversell. You do not overpromise. You let results speak. This restraint is not hesitation, it is confidence refined. The mind, once chaotic, is now coherent. Thoughts support one another instead of competing. Beliefs reinforce action instead of contradicting it. This internal harmony produces external effectiveness that feels almost effortless. Positive thinking has not removed complexity from life. It has given you the capacity to handle it. You no longer seek simplicity by avoidance. You create simplicity through clarity. And when moments arrive that would have once overwhelmed you, you notice something remarkable. You are present. Fully present. Not scattered, not panicked, not retreating. Presence has become your power. This presence allows you to see opportunities others miss, to respond where others freeze, to remain steady where others collapse. This is not superiority, it is preparation rewarded. You no longer need to announce belief. It is evident in how you show up, in how you decide, in how you persist. Belief has become embodied. And as this embodiment deepens, you realize the final truth Napoleon Hill pointed toward but few ever live, that the mind, disciplined and directed, becomes the most faithful partner you will ever have. It will carry you through uncertainty, sustain you through effort, and elevate you through purpose. Positive thinking was never about forcing happiness. It was about establishing authority. Authority over thought. Authority over meaning. Authority over direction. And with that authority, You have done the rarest thing of all. You have aligned who you think you are with who you are becoming. That alignment is power. That power is destiny. And destiny, once claimed from within, does not need permission from the world. It moves. It builds. It endures. This is how positive thinking creates wonders. Not in moments of excitement, but in a lifetime of deliberate thought. That quietly, relentlessly, turns intention into reality. And even as intention turns into reality, you remain grounded enough to know that this is not an ending. It is a rhythm you have learned to live by. A rhythm of thought, action, correction, and recommitment. The mind does not arrive at mastery once. It practices it daily. Positive thinking has taught you to respect renewal. When fatigue appears, you restore instead of retreat. When clarity dulls, you sharpen it. You no longer confuse rest with quitting or challenge with punishment. Everything has its place when thinking is ordered. You now understand the quiet power of discipline done privately. The mornings no one sees. The decisions no one applauds. The standards no one enforces but you. This is where destiny is actually shaped, not in moments of recognition, but in moments of choice. The world may never fully understand what changed in you. They may call it luck, timing, or coincidence. Let them. You know the truth. You know how many thoughts were corrected, how many fears were confronted, how many times you chose alignment over comfort. Positive thinking has given you composure under uncertainty. You no longer rush to label experiences as good or bad. You observe, interpret, and respond with intelligence. This pause between stimulus and response has become your advantage. You no longer live in mental extremes. You are not carried away by success nor crushed by setbacks. Balance has replaced volatility. And balance sustains progress longer than excitement ever could. There is a quiet pride in knowing you did not outsource your future to chance. That you took responsibility for the one thing always within reach, your thinking. From that single decision, everything else followed. You see now that the mind, once disciplined, begins to attract order naturally. Chaos feels foreign. Distraction feels uncomfortable. Purpose feels normal. This is how identity truly changes, not by force but by familiarity. Positive thinking has become less about effort and more about maintenance. You tend the mind like a garden, removing what weakens, reinforcing what strengthens, allowing growth to happen in its season. You no longer expect instant harvest. You trust cultivation. And as years pass, this way of thinking compounds quietly. What once required effort becomes instinct. What once felt challenging becomes standard. You do not marvel at your own resilience anymore. You rely on it. You begin to sense that your greatest achievement is not any single outcome, but the person you have become while pursuing them. Someone steady. Someone clear. Someone capable of carrying vision without being consumed by it. This is the lasting wonder positive thinking creates. Not momentary success, but enduring capability. Not fleeting motivation, but permanent alignment. Not escape from reality, but command within it. So whatever comes next, greater responsibility, greater challenge, greater opportunity, you meet it the same way you met everything else. With deliberate thought. With disciplined belief. With steady action. Because you no longer wait for confidence to appear. You think your way into it. You no longer hope circumstances improve. You improve the mind that engages them. And that is the final, enduring truth. When the mind is mastered, life follows. Quietly. Faithfully. Inevitably. And even as intention turns into reality, you remain grounded enough to know that this is not an ending. It is a rhythm you have learned to live by. A rhythm of thought, action, correction, and recommitment. The mind does not arrive at mastery once. It practices it daily. Positive thinking has taught you to respect renewal. When fatigue appears, you restore instead of retreat. When clarity dulls, you sharpen it. You no longer confuse rest with quitting or challenge with punishment. Everything has its place when thinking is ordered. You now understand the quiet power of discipline done privately. The mornings no one sees. The decisions no one applauds. The standards no one enforces but you. This is where destiny is actually shaped, not in moments of recognition, but in moments of choice. The world may never fully understand what changed in you. They may call it luck, timing, or coincidence. Let them. You know the truth. You know how many thoughts were corrected, how many fears were confronted, how many times you chose alignment over comfort. Positive thinking has given you composure under uncertainty. You no longer rush to label experiences as good or bad. You observe, interpret, and respond with intelligence. This pause between stimulus and response has become your advantage. You no longer live in mental extremes. You are not carried away by success nor crushed by setbacks. Balance has replaced volatility, and balance sustains progress longer than excitement ever could. There is a quiet pride in knowing you did not outsource your future to chance, that you took responsibility for the one thing always within reach, your thinking. From that single decision, everything else followed. You see now that the mind, once disciplined, begins to attract order naturally. Chaos feels foreign. Distraction feels uncomfortable. Purpose feels normal. This is how identity truly changes, not by force but by familiarity. Positive thinking has become less about effort and more about maintenance. You tend the mind like a garden, removing what weakens, reinforcing what strengthens, allowing growth to happen in its season. You no longer expect instant harvest. You trust cultivation. And as years pass, this way of thinking compounds quietly. What once required effort becomes instinct. What once felt challenging becomes standard. You do not marvel at your own resilience anymore. You rely on it. You begin to sense that your greatest achievement is not any single outcome, but the person you have become while pursuing them. Someone steady. Someone clear. Someone capable of carrying vision without being consumed by it. This is the lasting wonder positive thinking creates. Not momentary success, but enduring capability. Not fleeting motivation, but permanent alignment. Not escape from reality, but command within it. So whatever comes next, greater responsibility, greater challenge, greater opportunity, you meet it the same way you met everything else. With deliberate thought. With disciplined belief. With steady action. Because you no longer wait for confidence to appear. You think your way into it. You no longer hope circumstances improve. You improve the mind that engages them. And that is the final, enduring truth. When the mind is mastered, life follows. Quietly. Faithfully. Inevitably. And inevitably, you come to understand something even deeper, that mastery of the mind is not about control alone, but about harmony. You are no longer at war with yourself. Desire and discipline no longer collide. Thought and action no longer argue. They move together, in rhythm, towards something meaningful. Positive thinking has trained you to listen inwardly before acting outwardly. Impulse no longer leads, intention does. You do not rush to react because you trust your ability to respond wisely. This trust creates composure, and composure multiplies effectiveness. You begin to notice how often the world tries to rush decisions. Panic is loud. Fear demands immediacy. But the disciplined mind understands that speed without clarity creates regret. You slow the moment internally, even when action must be swift externally. That inner stillness becomes precision. You no longer romanticize other lives. Envy dissolves when purpose is clear. You respect other paths without abandoning your own. Comparison loses power when identity is settled. You are not behind. You are not late. You are aligned. Positive thinking has also refined your relationship with ambition. You still aim high, but now you aim honestly. You want growth that is sustainable, success that is earned, progress that strengthens rather than fractures. This maturity protects you from building a life you later have to escape. You understand now that the mind must be renewed continuously. Old patterns attempt return. Comfort tries to negotiate. Distraction whispers. But awareness has sharpened. You catch the drift early. You correct gently but firmly. Discipline no longer feels harsh. It feels respectful. There is a quiet gratitude for adversity now. Not because pain was pleasant, but because it was instructive. You see how pressure revealed strength you didn't know you had. How delay taught patience. How uncertainty sharpened faith. Nothing was wasted. Positive thinking has made you less reactive to outcomes and more committed to process. You trust that if the process is sound, results will follow in their time. This trust removes desperation and replaces it with steadiness. You now live from principles instead of moods. Principles do not change with weather or opinion. They anchor behavior. When thinking is principle-driven, life becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer. And clarity is power. You carry yourself differently now. Not with arrogance, not with hesitation, but with quiet assurance. You do not need to prove anything. You are too busy becoming something. The mind that once needed encouragement now generates it. The voice that once doubted now directs. The imagination that once wandered now builds. This is internal leadership fully realized. Positive thinking has done its ultimate work. It has made you self-governing. You are not pushed by fear nor pulled by approval. You move because you have decided to move. You persist because you have chosen to persist. And this choice, renewed daily, is stronger than circumstance. So when the road stretches long, you walk it. When the climb steepens, you ascend it. When uncertainty returns, you think through it. Because you know something now that few ever truly grasp. The outer world may challenge you, but it can no longer confuse you. The mind that learned to think deliberately does not lose its way. It adapts. It advances. It builds. And as long as you continue to choose your thoughts with intention and discipline, the wonders will not stop. They will simply keep unfolding, quietly, steadily, inevitably, as the natural result of a mind that finally learned how to lead. And leadership of the mind brings with it a rare kind of peace. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of alignment. You no longer feel divided between who you are and who you wish to be. The gap has narrowed because thought, belief, and action now move in the same direction. Positive thinking has taught you how to hold tension without breaking, ambition without anxiety, patience without stagnation, confidence without arrogance. These balances are not accidental, they are trained. You begin to recognize that most conflict in life begins as conflict in the mind. When the mind is scattered, life reflects confusion. When the mind is ordered, life reflects coherence. You are no longer surprised by this, you rely on it. You stop fearing responsibility. You welcome it. Responsibility is no longer a burden, it is proof of capacity. The more you grow internally, the more weight you can carry externally. And because your thinking is disciplined, that weight does not crush you, it strengthens you. Positive thinking has refined your sense of meaning. You no longer chase outcomes that leave you empty. You choose pursuits that demand your best and reward your growth. Fulfillment has replaced stimulation. Depth has replaced noise. You now understand that the mind must be challenged to stay sharp. Comfort dulls perception. Ease weakens resolve. So you choose growth voluntarily rather than being forced into it by crisis. This proactive discipline keeps you ahead of fear. You have learned to trust delayed gratification, to plant without immediate harvest, to build without instant recognition. This trust separates those who last from those who burn out. The long game now feels natural to you. Positive thinking has also changed how you interpret success in others. You are inspired rather than threatened. You study rather than compare. You understand that someone else's achievement does not reduce your own potential. Scarcity thinking has lost its grip. The mind, once trained, begins to seek excellence automatically. You notice details others overlook. You correct small misalignments before they become major problems. Precision becomes habit. Excellence becomes standard. And when doubt returns, as it sometimes will, you meet it calmly. You do not wrestle with it emotionally. You examine it rationally. You ask better questions. You reinforce stronger beliefs. Doubt passes when it is not fed. Positive thinking has not made you invincible. It has made you resilient. You still feel disappointment, but it no longer defines you. You still face uncertainty, but it no longer paralyzes you. You still encounter limits, but you no longer accept them without examination. You live now with a sense of authorship. You may not control every chapter, but you control the tone. You decide whether adversity becomes tragedy or training. This decision alone changes everything. And gradually, subtly, the world begins to treat you differently. Not because it owes you anything, but because you engage it differently. You bring clarity where others bring chaos. You bring steadiness where others bring reaction. You bring vision where others bring fear. Positive thinking has matured into wisdom. Wisdom that knows when to act. Wisdom that knows when to wait. Wisdom that knows when to persist. Wisdom that knows when to adapt. This wisdom is not loud. It does not seek attention. It simply works. And so the journey continues, not as struggle, not as fantasy, but as disciplined creation. Day after day. Thought after thought. Choice after choice. Because now you understand the ultimate truth behind all lasting success. The mind, once mastered, does not need to be motivated. It needs to be trusted. And when you trust it, when you lead it deliberately, it will carry you farther than circumstance ever could. And trusting the mind brings a quiet certainty that no external approval could ever replace. You are no longer searching for signs that you are on the right path. The feeling of alignment has become the sign. When thought and action agree, doubt loses its footing. Positive thinking has reshaped how you experience time. You are no longer haunted by the past or anxious about the future. The present has become powerful because it is intentional. Every moment now holds leverage. Every decision carries weight. Nothing feels wasted. You understand now that pressure reveals structure. When challenges arrive, they expose what is real and what was imagined. And because your thinking has been disciplined, what is real holds. You do not collapse under examination, you clarify. The mind that once feared exposure now welcomes it. You are no longer afraid of being tested. Tests confirm readiness. They sharpen focus. They separate desire from commitment. You meet them with calm determination. Positive thinking has given you a longer emotional horizon. You do not overreact to single days, single losses, single wins. You measure progress across seasons. You think in years, not hours. This long vision protects you from impulsive decisions that sabotage long-term growth. You have learned that emotions are signals, not commands. You feel them fully, but you do not obey them blindly. Thought now leads emotion, not the other way around. This is emotional mastery, the ability to experience without being controlled. The mind has become a place of strategy rather than struggle. You analyze before acting. You anticipate before reacting. You remain flexible without losing direction. This combination makes you adaptable without being fragile. Positive thinking has trained you to respect truth over comfort. You do not lie to yourself to feel better. You tell yourself the truth and then strengthen yourself to face it. This honesty builds real confidence, the kind that does not crumble when reality pushes back. You notice now that life responds faster when the mind is clear. Decisions attract momentum. Focus attracts opportunity. Consistency attracts trust. None of this feels mystical anymore. It feels logical, lawful, reliable. And still, you remain humble. You know the work is ongoing. You know complacency is the enemy of growth. You stay alert, not anxious. Disciplined, not rigid. Open, not naive. Positive thinking has made you harder to discourage and easier to guide. Harder to discourage because your belief is internal. Easier to guide because you are willing to learn. This balance keeps you progressing without arrogance. You now understand why so few experience lasting fulfillment. Not because life denies it, but because most never learn to lead their thinking long enough for alignment to form. They quit the inner work too early. But you did not. You stayed. You corrected. You refined. You persisted. And because of that persistence, you now stand on stable ground. Not because the world is stable, but because you are. This is the final realization that settles quietly but permanently. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need constant motivation. You do not need external permission. You need only to continue thinking deliberately, believing consistently, and acting in alignment with what you know to be true. As long as you do that, the path will keep revealing itself. The strength will keep renewing itself. The wonders will keep unfolding themselves. Because the mind you have built does not wait for opportunity, it recognizes it, prepares for it, and meets it ready. And that is how positive thinking, practiced faithfully and lived fully, becomes not just a philosophy, but a force that shapes a life. And as that force continues shaping your life, something subtle but undeniable takes place. You stop resisting who you are meant to become. The inner friction fades. The excuses lose their voice. The path ahead no longer feels heavy because you are no longer dragging an old identity behind you. Positive thinking has dissolved inner sabotage. You no longer undermine progress with hesitation. You no longer delay action waiting for perfect certainty. You understand now that clarity grows from movement, not the other way around. So you move, and clarity follows. You have learned to respect momentum. Even small actions, when aligned, create motion. And motion, once started, wants to continue. This is why you guard your thinking carefully. You know that a single undisciplined thought can slow the rhythm you've built. The mind now operates like a well-trained instrument. It responds when called. It focuses when needed. It rests without guilt. You no longer live in constant tension because effort is no longer chaotic, it is directed. Positive thinking has also reshaped how you deal with uncertainty in others. When people doubt you, you do not rush to convince them. When they misunderstand, you do not argue. You let time and results speak. This restraint is not weakness. It is confidence matured. You understand that not everyone is meant to see your vision early. Some only recognize direction once distance has been traveled. This no longer frustrates you. You move forward without dragging belief behind you. The mind that once sought reassurance now provides it. You remind yourself of progress. You recall resilience. You reinforce belief through evidence gathered from your own endurance. This self-reliance is quiet, but unshakable. Positive thinking has allowed you to separate urgency from importance. You do not confuse loud demands with meaningful ones. You invest your best energy where it compounds, not where it merely reacts. And because of this, your life begins to feel intentional instead of accidental. You wake with direction. You act with purpose. You rest with peace. The inner chaos that once drained you has been replaced with ordered focus. You also recognize now that success is not a straight ascent. There are plateaus. There are recalibrations. There are moments where progress feels invisible again. But these no longer alarm you. You know how growth behaves. You trust the cycle. Positive thinking has taught you how to return to center quickly. When distraction pulls, you realign. When doubt appears, you strengthen belief. When fatigue arrives, you restore. This recovery speed is mastery. You are no longer trying to become powerful. You are practicing power. And power, practiced daily, becomes natural. The mind that once reacted now anticipates. The life that once felt overwhelming now feels navigable. Not because it became easier, but because you became stronger in the only way that truly lasts. This is why positive thinking is not taught properly. It is not surface-level optimism. It is not repeating phrases without discipline. It is mental training. It is identity construction. It is leadership from within. And now that you know this, not intellectually, but experientially, you move differently. You choose differently. You endure differently. You are no longer asking life, "What will you give me?" You are asking yourself, "What am I prepared to build?" And that question changes everything. Because when preparation meets persistence, when belief meets action, when disciplined thinking meets time, wonders stop being rare events. They become the natural outcome of a mind that finally learned how to stand, how to focus, and how to lead itself forward, without retreat, without apology, and without surrender. And leading yourself forward becomes less about force and more about faithfulness. Faithful to the vision you refined. Faithful to the standards you set when no one was watching. Faithful to the inner agreement you made to never abandon your thinking to fear again. Positive thinking has now become instinctive. You no longer label it. You no longer try to practice it. It simply governs how you interpret, how you decide, how you persist. The mind defaults to strength because strength has become familiar. You have learned to live without mental excess. No excess worry. No excess drama. No excess reaction. Energy is conserved and directed. And because it is directed, it multiplies. You no longer seek constant stimulation. You seek alignment. Noise feels unnecessary. Distraction feels expensive. You protect your attention because you know attention is the gateway through which reality enters the mind. Positive thinking has trained you to see the difference between urgency and importance. Many things demand your reaction. Few deserve your devotion. This discernment sharpens your life. You stop scattering effort and start concentrating power. And in concentration, you find depth. Depth of focus. Depth of purpose. Depth of patience. Shallow effort fades quickly. Deep effort endures. You choose depth now, not because it is easier, but because it lasts. You also understand something quietly liberating. You do not need to win every moment. You need to stay aligned across moments. A single bad day no longer shakes you. A single success no longer defines you. You think in patterns, not snapshots. Positive thinking has strengthened your internal compass. When confusion appears, you return to principles. When temptation appears, you return to purpose. When fatigue appears, you return to meaning. These returns keep you steady. You are no longer haunted by the question, "Am I enough?" The question has transformed into, "Am I aligned?" And alignment is something you can always choose. This choice gives you peace without passivity and ambition without anxiety. You can want more without feeling incomplete. You can strive without self-rejection. This is emotional maturity earned through disciplined thought. You begin to notice that your presence alone influences environments. Not because you dominate, but because you stabilize. Calm is contagious. Clarity spreads. Purpose invites respect. You lead without needing a title. Positive thinking has also deepened your patience with progress. You understand that meaningful results resist haste. They demand structure, time, and integrity. You are no longer tempted by shortcuts that compromise foundation. You now live by a quiet equation you have proven to yourself again and again. Clear thinking creates aligned action. Aligned action creates momentum. Momentum, sustained, creates results. And results, over time, create legacy. Legacy is no longer a distant idea. It is being built daily in the way you think, the way you respond, the way you persist when quitting would be easier. Legacy begins internally long before it is visible externally. This is the final evolution of positive thinking. Not excitement, not motivation, but ownership. Ownership of your thoughts. Ownership of your direction. Ownership of your growth. And from this ownership comes a freedom few ever experience. The freedom of knowing that no matter what the world brings, you will meet it prepared. Prepared in mind. Prepared in belief. Prepared in discipline. You do not wait for confidence. You generate it. You do not hope for strength. You build it. You do not ask whether wonders are possible. You understand now why they are inevitable. Because when the mind is trained, when belief is anchored, and when action is consistent, life has no choice but to respond. And it does. Quietly, relentlessly, faithfully, to the thinker who learned how to lead from within and never surrendered that power again. And as that power becomes permanent, you stop separating life into moments of strength and moments of weakness. You understand now that strength is not the absence of doubt, but the presence of direction. Doubt may pass through the mind, but it no longer takes residence there. Positive thinking has refined your awareness to such a degree that you notice shifts before they become problems. A drifting thought, a weakening habit, a subtle loss of focus. You correct early, gently, decisively. Mastery is not dramatic, it is preventative. You are no longer surprised by responsibility. You anticipated it. You trained for it. The weight you carry today would have crushed the version of you who once let thoughts run unchecked. But now, the structure is strong. The foundation holds. The mind has become a place of preparation, not escape. You do not use thought to hide from reality, you use it to engage reality intelligently. Planning replaces wishing. Strategy replaces complaint. Intention replaces impulse. Positive thinking has also taught you how to release what no longer serves. Old identities, old narratives, old limitations that once felt protective but are now restrictive. You let go without resentment because growth has made them unnecessary. You move with a sense of inner permission now. You no longer wait to feel ready. Readiness is something you generate through decision and follow-through. You act, refine, and act again. This cycle keeps you advancing. The mind that once feared commitment now welcomes it. Commitment brings focus. Focus brings power. Power brings progress. You no longer confuse freedom with endless options. True freedom is the ability to commit without fear. Positive thinking has given you an uncommon relationship with effort. You are not intimidated by hard days. You are not discouraged by slow seasons. You understand the terrain of achievement well enough to keep walking even when visibility is low. And because of this understanding, you stop asking for guarantees. You no longer need them. Your confidence is no longer based on predicted outcomes, but on proven character. You trust who you are becoming more than what you are chasing. You also understand now that influence grows naturally from integrity. When thought, word, and action align, credibility forms without effort. People listen, not because you demand attention, but because your presence feels anchored. Positive thinking has matured into wisdom that speaks softly and acts decisively. You no longer rush to prove intelligence. You demonstrate it through restraint, timing, and consistency. You have learned the rare skill of staying mentally upright when conditions lean. When pressure mounts, you do not shrink, you stabilize. When uncertainty expands, you do not scatter, you focus. This is where your thinking now lives, above reaction, beyond fear, rooted in purpose. And from this place, the future no longer feels like something you must conquer. It feels like something you are steadily meeting, step by step, thought by thought, choice by choice. You no longer wonder if you will succeed. You wonder how well you will steward the success when it arrives. Because now you understand that positive thinking was never about attracting things. It was about becoming the kind of person who can hold them. Hold responsibility without collapse. Hold opportunity without confusion. Hold power without losing integrity. That is the real wonder. And it is already working through you. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, clarity over chaos, and belief over fear. This is not the end of the journey. This is the mind that carries you through all of it. Steady, deliberate, unshakable. And as long as you continue to think this way, to believe this way, to act this way, the wonders will not stop. They will simply keep unfolding as the natural expression of a life led from within. And as they keep unfolding, you begin to sense something quietly profound. Life no longer feels adversarial. It feels responsive. Not because it became gentle, but because you became grounded. You stopped meeting resistance with resistance and started meeting it with intelligence. Positive thinking has taught you to move with reality instead of against it. You do not waste energy arguing with what is, you ask how to work with it. This cooperation with truth gives you leverage that force never could. You are no longer surprised by complexity. You expect it. You no longer fear responsibility. You prepare for it. The mind that once sought simplicity now seeks coherence. And coherence creates strength that does not fracture under pressure. You understand now that mastery is quiet repetition. Showing up again. Thinking correctly again. Choosing discipline again. Most people underestimate the power of doing the right thing consistently because it lacks drama. But you have learned that consistency outperforms intensity every time. Positive thinking has refined your patience to the point where waiting no longer feels like stagnation. It feels like positioning. You use time instead of fighting it. You let preparation mature. You let foundation settle. This patience is not passive, it is strategic. You no longer rush to label moments as success or failure. You see them as information. Everything is feedback. Every outcome is data. This neutrality keeps your ego from interfering with growth. You learn faster because you are not defending an identity, you are building one. The mind that once feared mistakes now welcomes correction. Correction means refinement. Refinement means progress. Progress means alignment is working. Nothing threatens you when learning becomes identity. Positive thinking has also changed how you experience effort over time. Burnout fades when work is connected to meaning. Fatigue fades when action is aligned with belief. You still get tired, but you recover faster because you are not internally divided. You now understand why so many give up just before momentum appears. Not because the path is wrong, but because their thinking was not strong enough to carry them through delay. You stayed. You strengthened thought when results were slow. That is why momentum eventually arrived. And when it did, you were ready. Ready not just to receive, but to manage. Ready not just to succeed, but to sustain. Ready not just to achieve, but to evolve. Positive thinking has become the invisible structure supporting everything you build. Without it, success would be unstable. With it, growth compounds naturally. You do not chase certainty anymore. You create it through preparation. You do not hope for confidence. You reinforce it through action. You do not ask whether you are capable. You act as someone who is, and capability expands to meet behavior. This is the final shift. From seeking to being. From wishing to building. From reacting to leading. The mind that once waited for conditions now sets them internally. And when inner conditions are right, outer conditions eventually follow. This is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is transformation that holds. And as you continue forward, calm, deliberate, unwavering, you carry with you the only guarantee that ever mattered. No matter what changes around you, the way you think will continue to work for you. And as long as that remains true, as long as the mind stays disciplined, as long as belief stays anchored, as long as action stays aligned, the wonders will not end. They will simply keep appearing, not as miracles, but as the natural outcome of a life guided by a mind that finally learned how to lead. And leading like this, from the inside outward, you begin to sense a rare freedom, the freedom of inner certainty. Not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about yourself. You no longer ask, what if this doesn't work? You ask, what will this teach me as I make it work? That single shift keeps you moving when others stop. Positive thinking has dissolved the fear of effort wasted. You understand now that no aligned effort is ever lost. Even when results differ from expectation, growth is gained. Skill is sharpened. Character is reinforced. Nothing leaks out of a disciplined life. It compounds. You stop bargaining with discomfort. You stop negotiating with procrastination. You understand that resistance is the toll every meaningful path demands. And because your thinking is steady, you pay that toll without resentment. The mind now seeks responsibility instead of avoiding it. Responsibility signals expansion. It means you are trusted by life to handle more. And because you trained your thinking long before the load arrived, you are ready when it does. Positive thinking has given you a new relationship with fear. Fear no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a threshold, a sign that growth is near. Instead of backing away, you lean in, thoughtfully, deliberately, prepared. You are no longer tempted to abandon standards in moments of pressure. Pressure has become the moment when standards matter most. This integrity gives you a quiet pride no applause can replace. The voice inside your mind is no longer divided. It does not argue, insult, or weaken you. It directs. It reminds. It steadies. You have become your own strongest ally. And when setbacks appear now, they do not shock you. They signal recalibration. You adjust the angle, not the vision. You refine the method, not the mission. This adaptability keeps progress alive. Positive thinking has taught you that strength is built in the unseen repetitions, the times you choose clarity over comfort, focus over distraction, patience over panic. These moments never trend, never go viral, never get noticed. But they decide everything. You now live with a sense of internal sufficiency. You are not complete, but you are grounded. You do not need permission to grow. You do not need validation to persist. You are anchored in something deeper than approval. This is why external chaos affects you less. When the inner world is ordered, the outer world loses its power to destabilize. You observe storms without becoming them. Positive thinking has sharpened your vision enough to see beyond immediate reward. You build for durability, not applause. For substance, not appearance. You want progress that holds under weight. And slowly, unmistakably, the world responds, not dramatically, not instantly, but faithfully. Doors open when preparation meets timing. Opportunities appear when readiness is proven. Momentum builds when direction is sustained. You are no longer surprised by success. You recognize it as alignment made visible. This is the quiet truth behind every enduring achievement. Long before the world changes, the thinker does. Long before results appear, belief stabilizes. Long before recognition arrives, discipline is established. And so you continue, steady, aware, intentional. Not chasing wonders. Not waiting for them. But creating the conditions where they must appear. Because when the mind is disciplined, when belief is consistent, and when action is aligned, life has no alternative. It responds, again and again. To the one who learned that positive thinking is not a mood, not a slogan, not a moment, but a way of being, that shapes a lifetime. And shaped like this, your lifetime begins to take on a different texture. Days no longer blur together as survival units. Each day feels intentional, weighted with meaning, even when it is quiet. Especially when it is quiet. You have learned that silence is not emptiness. It is alignment holding steady. Positive thinking has trained you to recognize the difference between noise and signal. Most of the world lives distracted, reacting to urgency that has nothing to do with purpose. You do not. You pause. You evaluate. You choose. This alone puts you years ahead of where you once stood. You no longer chase motivation. You build momentum. Motivation is emotional and fragile. Momentum is structural and reliable. You show up whether you feel inspired or not, because your thinking has matured beyond emotion. It answers to commitment. The mind you inhabit now does not exaggerate difficulty. It assesses it. It does not dramatize obstacles. It dissects them. Problems shrink when approached with clarity instead of panic. What once felt overwhelming now feels solvable. Positive thinking has also taught you how to endure uncertainty without becoming bitter. You accept that not everything unfolds on your schedule, but you also know that nothing unfolds without preparation. So you prepare, relentlessly, calmly, without complaint. You have stopped asking life for fairness. You ask yourself for discipline. Fairness is unpredictable. Discipline is dependable. And dependable thinking creates dependable results. The inner dialogue that once sabotaged you has been replaced by a voice that speaks in principles. It reminds you what matters when emotions flare. It brings you back to vision when distractions multiply. It grounds you when pressure mounts. You understand now why Napoleon Hill emphasized definiteness of purpose above all else. Without it, positive thinking has no direction. With it, thought becomes force, focused, applied, unstoppable. You no longer fear commitment because you know how to course correct. You no longer fear failure because you understand feedback. You no longer fear judgment because you are too busy building something real. Positive thinking has eliminated the need to compare. Comparison dissolves when purpose is clear. You are not racing anyone. You are executing your own design. And that frees enormous mental energy. This energy does not go to ego. It goes to execution, to refinement, to depth. You become less impressed by appearances and more impressed by durability. You value what lasts. And because your thinking is clean, your decisions become cleaner. Fewer regrets. Fewer emotional reactions. Fewer wasted detours. Life simplifies. Not because it becomes easy, but because your mind becomes ordered. Positive thinking has taught you how to stay whole when circumstances fragment others. You do not splinter under pressure. You consolidate. You become more focused, not less. This is the quiet miracle no one talks about. Not sudden wealth. Not overnight success. Not dramatic breakthroughs. But a mind that does not betray you when it matters most. A mind that holds steady when stakes rise. A mind that does not panic when risk appears. A mind that does not collapse when patience is required. This is the real wonder being created. And it continues to deepen. Because the longer you live this way, the more natural it becomes. Discipline turns into instinct. Focus turns into habit. Belief turns into identity. You are no longer practicing positive thinking. You are thinking positively by default. Not optimistically, but intelligently, deliberately, strategically. And from that place, everything you touch begins to carry structure. Your work, your relationships, your goals, your future, all shaped by a mind that finally learned its role. Not to react to life, but to lead it. And so it ends where it always began, within you. Not with noise. Not with applause, but with certainty. You understand now that positive thinking was never about pretending the world is kind. It was about becoming strong enough to meet the world as it is. Steady-handed, unmoved by fear and undistracted by illusion. You no longer wait for permission to rise. You no longer ask circumstances to agree with you. You think first. You decide second. You act third. And life adjusts accordingly. This is the law Napoleon Hill pointed toward, though few truly grasped it. That the mind, once disciplined, becomes a force of nature. Not loud, not reckless, but inevitable. You have crossed the invisible line. From hoping to knowing, from wishing to building, from reacting to commanding your direction. The old life, driven by chance, emotion, and borrowed beliefs, can no longer claim you. You have outgrown it. And growth, once earned, is irreversible. From this moment forward, every thought carries weight. Every decision carries momentum. Every day carries intention. You do not chase wonders anymore. You produce them. Through clarity, through belief, through disciplined thought aligned with purposeful action. And when the world asks how it happened, when they call it luck, timing, or miracle, you will know the truth. It was the mind, directed, unshaken. Because when a person learns to govern their thinking, Nothing else remains out of reach. This is not the end. This is the moment you walk forward knowing the greatest power you will ever possess is already working within you.